Money. We use it every single day, we earn it, we spend it, we worry about it. But have you ever really stopped and asked yourself, what is it? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on this thing we use all the time and explore the incredible story of money.
Okay, so let's just start with a super basic question. If I have something you want and you've got something I need, why can't we just, swap? Why do we need this whole money thing in the middle of everything? It's a great question, and the answer is going to take us on a little trip back in time. All right, I want you to picture this: a world with no cash, no credit cards, no apps, no crypto, nothing. It's just you, your neighbors, and whatever you can make or grow. This was the reality for a long, long time. This was the world of the barter system.
At its heart, bartering is about as simple as it gets. The textbook definition is just what you see here, the exchange of goods for goods. You have some chickens, I have some wheat, we make a trade. Seems easy enough, right? Well, it gets messy fast.
Let's really put ourselves in this world for a minute. Let's say you're a fantastic baker. Your bread is the talk of the town. But here's the problem: your shoes are completely worn out. So logically, you head over to the shoemaker, bread in hand.
And this is where the whole system just hits a wall. You show up with your amazing fresh-baked bread, but the shoemaker just shakes his head. He's got plenty of bread for the week. What he really needs is some firewood. So now what? You're stuck. And that little story right there, it shows exactly why a world built on bartering is so incredibly tricky. On the surface, it seems totally logical, but in practice, it's a huge headache. Let's really dig into why it just doesn't work that well.
So there are 4 huge hurdles with bartering. First, this fancy-sounding problem: the lack of double coincidence of wants. That's exactly what our baker ran into. You have to find someone who not only has the thing you want, but they also have to want the exact thing you have. The odds of that lining up are just not great. Second, how do you even agree on a price? There's no common measure of value. Is a pair of shoes worth 10 loaves of bread? 50? Every single trade becomes a brand new complicated negotiation. Then, you can't really do IOUs because there's no standard for deferred payments. Promising someone 3 chickens next year is messy. And finally, you can't really save up. It's a terrible store of value. Your wealth, your bread, your wheat, it's all gonna spoil.
So, with all these massive problems making trade slow and inefficient, humanity did what it does best. We invented a solution, a really, really brilliant one, designed to fix every single one of those issues. And that invention, of course, was money. And just look at this definition. It's like a perfect checklist for fixing everything that was wrong with bartering. Money is a medium of exchange. Boom, that solves the double coincidence problem. It's a measure of value, so we finally have stable prices. It's a store of value, which means we can actually save for the future. And it's a standard for deferred payments, so we can have things like contracts and loans. It's pretty genius, really. But here's the thing. Money didn't just show up one day as the coins and bills we know. Oh no, the idea of money is ancient, but what we've actually used for money has changed like crazy over the centuries. It has been a wild ride. So way back in ancient times, we started with commodity money. This was just useful stuff, things everyone agreed had value, like salt or rice or even weapons. Then, around 600 BC, we took a big leap to metallic money. Gold, silver, copper. These were durable, divisible, and way easier to carry. But even carrying gold coins is heavy and risky, right? So around the 7th century, we get paper money, which was really just an IOU for the metal held in a vault somewhere. And from there, it just got more abstract. The 19th century gave us credit money, like checks. Then the 20th century brought us plastic money, our credit and debit cards. And now, we're in the age of digital money, which is literally just ones and zeros on a computer server. That jump to paper money was absolutely massive. It wasn't about the paper itself. I mean, the paper is worthless. It was all about trust. People had to collectively agree and trust that a central authority, like a government or a bank, would honor what that piece of paper represented. The entire system is built on that shared belief. It's pretty mind-blowing when you stop to think about it. Okay, so that brings us to today. With all these different kinds of money flying around, how in the world do we actually count it all? It's not as easy as just adding up the notes and coins. Economists have some very specific and kind of abstract ways of measuring the total supply.
So, to get how we measure this stuff, we got to understand two key terms. First, there's what you and I would call money, the cash in our wallets plus the money in our checking accounts. But then economists track something called high-powered money. This includes all that public cash plus the giant cash reserves that the banks themselves hold. You can think of this high-powered money as the concrete foundation that the whole financial system is built on.
Now, when economists want to get a quick snapshot of the money that's ready to be spent, they almost always start with a measure called M1. Just think of M1 as the most basic, most liquid, everyday kind of money out there. So what actually makes up M1? Well, it's three main things. First, the actual physical cash, all the notes and coins people are holding. Second, what we call demand deposits. That's just a fancy term for the money in your checking account, stuff you can get to instantly. And third, a smaller category of other deposits that foreign banks and big institutions have with the country's central bank, like the Reserve Bank of India shown here.
But M1 is really just the beginning of the story. If you look at this table, you can see that economists have broader categories to get the full picture. M2 adds certain savings accounts to M1. Then you get to M3, a very widely used measure, which adds time deposits. Think of money you've locked away in a CD for a while. And M4 is even broader still. The key idea here is we're moving along a spectrum from narrow money that's easy to spend to broad money that's a bit less accessible.
So the most important takeaway here is this whole idea of liquidity. Think of M1 as being like water. It's the most liquid, you can spend it right this second. As you move down the list toward M4, the money becomes more like ice. It's still valuable, but it's less liquid, not as easy to spend. That's why M1 and M2 get called narrow money, while the less liquid M3 and M4 are called broad money. And central banks watch all of these, but M3 is often seen as the big one, the best overall picture of a country's money supply.
When you step back and look at it, the whole journey is just incredible. We went from trading goods directly to using shells and salt to trusting pieces of paper and now to sending digital signals across the globe in an instant. Money isn't a static thing. It's a technology that is constantly evolving. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. What comes next? What will money look like in another 100 years?